Hey everybody, Neil Thompson, founder of Teach the Geek here. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. And as always, remember to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Every bit helps. I want to talk about technical conferences and some do's and don'ts when it comes to presenting at technical conferences. God knows how many technical conferences I've been to, and just sitting in the audience thinking to myself, man, is this person had just not done this or done that, this would have been a much better presentation. So the first one is to practice to time, meaning when you're practicing your presentation, and please practice your presentation, practice it so that you actually finish within time. You can actually look in the agenda of any technical conference and you can see where you're placed. You can see how long you have to present from what time to what time. Make sure that you finish within that time. Just the amount of times I've been at technical conferences and people go over the time that they're allotted, it just astounds me. And in the event that you have to start late because someone else didn't finish their presentation on time, well, make it so that you finish yours on time. Don't just think, well, I had 15 minutes and I'm going to take my 15 minutes. Please finish within the allotted time so that you finish within the time that you were given. So at least you can help to put the agenda back on schedule. Because if everyone took that had that same attitude, then it'll never be able. They'd never be able to get the schedule back on track. So don't be that person. Be the person that actually practices their presentation so that they finish within the allotted time that they've been given. Another thing that you should do is incorporate stories into your presentations. I don't know. I mean, going to these presentations sometimes at technical conferences and just trying to sit through a bunch of people just rattling off the various experiments they did and the data, and then presenting the data that they found from those experiments can be quite boring, especially if it's over and over again, because typically it's multiple presentations over the course of a day or a few days. And at some point you just get bored and it's just the words just don't even mean anything anymore. And it's really hard to pay attention. So do your best to incorporate stories into your presentations. What type of I guess I suppose a story that you could try to incorporate into a presentation, at least a technical one, is the story behind behind the experiment itself. I mean, what did it take to get to that point to do that type of experiment? So did you get the type of results that you were expecting? If not, why? Just make it more personable as opposed to just rattling off these data points that people might not even care all that much about, but make them care by using stories. So that's another do. Another thing you really want to do is look at the audience. I mean, a lot of people that present at these conferences, they tend to be introverted, maybe shy. And the idea of looking at people is something that they're uncomfortable with. And so what ends up happening is they read slides. And when you read, then you don't look at people because you look at the slides. When you're looking at the slides and not looking at people, then people don't tend to look at you. And if they don't look at you, they're likely not listening to you either. It's kind of a chain effect or a domino effect. So it's really important to train yourself to actually look at people when you're presenting. And now, not only does it help engage people, but when you're looking at people, you can't read slides. So it really forces you to know your material well. So those are a few do's. And then when it comes to don'ts, I'd say one of the don'ts is don't waste the opportunity. For so many of the technical conferences that I've been to, especially when you have academics, maybe postdocs, professors, grad students who are presenting, I often get the sense that they're presenting because it's something that they can put on their CV. They can say that they presented at that conference. And the idea of actually imparting information to the audience is more secondary. At least figuring out the best way to impart that information to the audience is secondary. It's what's primary is I presented at this conference. But for the majority of these people, especially the grad students and postdocs who end up in industry, because many of them will not be able to stay in academia, it's way more important to be able to impart information because that's something you'll have to do when you enter industry. You're not going to be working with you likely will not be working with other postdocs and people with PhDs. You'll be working with people like me, people that don't have PhDs. You'll be working with non-technical people as well. And you'll have to be able to describe what you're doing to these people. And you're going to have to be able to do it in an interesting way for them to even pay attention. So when you have this opportunity to present at a technical conference, don't waste that opportunity to practice what you'll end up having to use when you enter industry, which is being able to present in a way that non-technical people can appreciate and understand. So don't waste that opportunity. Another thing you really don't want to do, as I mentioned earlier, is read slides. And as I mentioned earlier, you don't want to read them because it's difficult to engage people when you're not looking at them. So know your material well enough so that you're able to look at people when you're actually presenting, and try to minimize the amount of text on your slides so you're not even tempted to read the slides, because there's not a whole lot to read. you use more images instead. And when you do that, then, as I said, it'll force you to really know your material well. So now you actually are forced to look at somewhere. So if you're going to look somewhere, look at your audience. Don't look at your shoes. And I also, one thing to not do is have a whole bunch of text on the slide. I did just mention that. And as I mentioned earlier, the reason you don't want to do that is you don't want to have that temptation to read your slides as opposed to looking at the people that you're talking to. So when it comes to some do's and don'ts for technical presentations, some do's, you really want to make sure that you practice so that you finish within the time that's been allotted. You want to incorporate stories into your presentation so they're not as boring. It's just presenting a whole bunch of dry data. You actually want to look at the audience so that you can get engaged with them. And then some don'ts, you want to not waste that opportunity to practice the skills that you'll likely have to use in industry, where most of you will end up, whether you think so or not. You want to make sure that you're not reading your slides, and you want to make sure that you minimize the amount of text on slides so you're not tempted to read them. Hopefully this has been helpful. Again, my name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. And as always, remember to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Every bit helps. Until next time, take care.